Evangeline Parry is a compulsive writer, film fanatic, and wannabe ghost hunter. In school, she was the awkward, introverted girl with a stutter and a terrible haircut. But despite these setbacks, she was also very good at English, and that was because she absolutely adored, and still adores, storytelling. Her love for the art of storytelling took her to college to study creative writing, and then to university to study film with a specialisation in screenwriting. Evangeline writes both screenplays and novels and started freelancing as a script reader and editor after graduating from university in 2020, right as the COVID pandemic hit. The only thing she loves just as much as working on her ideas is working on other people's. She also runs her own YouTube channel where she talks about all things writing, reading and careering. Listen to this episode to find out what film made Evangeline fall in love with screenwriting, get some great recommendations for aspiring screenwriters, and enjoy a deeper introduction to other interesting production roles. Enjoy! Hello Evangeline, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
For the beginning, can you please try to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Evangeline. I'm 23. I am a script editor, freelance, and yeah, I've just moved to London, and yeah.
So let's start from your beginnings. Why did you decide to become a filmmaker or a screenwriter in the first place?
Well, it's actually really random and weird, but when I was younger, my dad, who's a really big film fan, used to force me to watch all the 80s classics, Back to the Future, all those sorts of films. And one day he made me watch The Karate Kid, and I was really didn't want to watch it, and I was like, no, it sounds really stupid. I was 10 years old or something, but he made me watch it, and then after it finished, I was so amazed by it with the whole ending with the crane kick and everything, that I was just so into it that I was like, oh my god, I want to write films and make people feel the way I felt watching that film. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was literally from that day on that I was like, I want to write films. So yeah.
So was Karate Kid that film that made you?
Yeah, literally. I know it sounds so silly, but it literally was.
I honestly didn't expect this one. Because if you said Back to the Future, I think it's an amazing film. I would be surprised with that one. But Karate Kid, interesting.
Yes, yeah, I know.
What about some other films you remember from the 80s that you used to watch?
I mean, well, Back to the Future is my favourite film. Anytime I'm sort of asked to watch a film, I'm always straight away Back to the Future. I just think it's epic.
Is it the first one?
Yeah, definitely the first one. The Breakfast Club, I think, is incredible. The Outsiders is one of my top films of all time. I think that film is just beautiful. And not many people to see
film is it?
The Outsiders. It's Francis Ford Coppola. It's the first film of quite a lot of really famous actors, Tom Cruise. It's one of his first films. Emilio Estevez, got Patrick Swayze in it. It's got the most incredible cast, and it's set in the 1960s, and it's about gang culture in America, and it's just so good, and no one's ever seen it, but it's one of the best films ever.
I must admit I'm one of those people. I think I've never heard of the film, but I found it now and we'll have a look.
Yes, it's so good.
So do you like these films because of the scripts or the film in general?
I think most films I enjoy because of the script. I could sort of handle a film if it didn't look amazing, if the cinematography wasn't, incredible, but the story was really good, I'd still happily watch it. But if a film has incredible cinematography but not a very good script, I can't sit through it. So normally I have to be really into the script and the characters to be able to sit through a film, else I'll just switch it off.
Can you give some examples, a film that has a great story but not a good cinematography, and the opposite?
I mean, when I say not good cinematography, that's obviously
or the whole look of the film in general, not probably necessarily cinematography.
Yeah. I say the look of the film isn't amazing. I still it doesn't look terrible, if that makes sense. For example, films I guess, I don't know if you've watched any kind of typical British films, but a lot of British films, especially ones from a while back, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, that sort of period. A lot of the films are like very much drama. They used to call them like kitchen sink dramas, where they're just kind of like slice of life. And there's nothing like impressive, you would say, about the cinematography. It's just very like, straightforward filming. But the stories are like incredible. So like If by Lindsay Anderson is pretty straightforward in terms of the way it's filmed, but it looks beautiful. Sorry, the story's beautiful. Quadrophenia is one of my all-time favorite films. And again, that's just very like basic in terms of the way it's shot, but the story's really good. Yeah, those sorts of films, I'd say, might not be the most visually impressive, but the story is what makes it, and the script.
Yeah, I need to have a look afterwards. I never heard of those films.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. When I started studying film in college, I was introduced to a lot of like films that I'd never even sort of heard of. And that's when I started watching the more kind of niche ones, I guess.
Do you still continue watching these niche films or not anymore?
Yeah, but I would say I more watch, if I literally just quit my job at the cinema, a lot of the films I'd watch would be the free tickets I can get off the cinema. Certainly like the movies that are released in the cinema. And the cinema I worked in, we didn't really get many of the niche ones or the ones that aren't like proper mainstream. So I'd say I definitely don't watch as many as I used to. But if there's one that really like catches my eye, I will find it somewhere.
Was it like one of those big cinema chains such as Odeon or?
Yeah, but it's a chain from like Devon. Like that sounds really weird, but it's not. Like the chain's Merlin, and I think they only have cinemas around the like West Country. They don't have any like London or anywhere like that. So yeah, it's just kind of Devonshire based, I think. But they have quite a few down there. But yeah.
So I guess mostly like these blockbusters.
Mm-hmm.
Superheroes and stuff like that.
Yeah, lots of them.
So it sounds like that you knew from a young age that you wanted to become or pursue a career of screenwriter.
Yeah. To be fair, it has actually been like a really long time that I don't know about you, but when I was young, I would like every other week I'd like want to be something different. So I'd be like, oh, I want to be like an actor, and then I wanted to be like a vet, and then a doctor. Went through them all, but then when I kind of like settled on writer, it never changed, and that was from like the age of 10 onwards. I was so like had my heart set on being a writer. So yeah, it's been a long time.
And the passion still continues?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
It sounds good that you at least knew from a young age what career you want to pursue.
Yeah.
So how did you start studying that? Was it at university or you said at college before?
It was at college. But like prior to college, because in my school, like because some schools, secondary schools, do like media or film as like a subject GCSEs, but mine didn't. So in school, the only like opportunity I got to like study writing was a 6-week module in like English in like year 11. But like I absolutely loved it. Like it was like the only time in school that I actually really enjoyed. It was like 6 weeks, and that was it. And then when college came around, I did film studies and creative writing. It was really good. I think film studies was a bit more of the like theory, wasn't so much making film. We did do a bit of that, but it was more actually studying film, which to be fair, like I think, especially now with what I'm doing, and it'll probably come up later, but I do some like YouTube stuff as well. And that's a lot to do with like the analysis of film and like the script itself. I think my film studies course really helps with that now, being able to kind of look a bit deeper, I guess, when watching a film. And then creative writing, I was able to do like a module on script writing, which was the first time I'd probably been taught about it. Prior to that, I'd just literally like read it from books and watched YouTube videos and stuff like that. So and then university was what I always had my heart set on, was studying film at university in London. That was like my goal from like, oh my gosh, probably like year 10 in school. So eventually I applied for that.
So how hard or easy was it for you to get accepted into university? It sounds like that it may have been okay since you had already some stuff written.
It was okay, but I had a horrific experience with a UAL. Is it? Yeah, UAL, University of Arts London. I went for an interview there, and like I was really proud to get an interview because they kept on saying how it was really hard to get an interview and it probably wouldn't happen, but it did. And I was like, oh God. So I went. Yeah, in the interview room, it was like 2 people and me, and they were so horrible to me. And I've got quite thick skin. Like, I don't really care normally what people say to me, but they were so like condescending and just really rude. And you're obviously in a situation where you're already really nervous anyway. And I literally came out of the interview crying. That's how bad it was. And then was like, okay, I've definitely failed that interview. And in the end, I got like an offer on like, I think it was like a TV course, which I didn't want to do because I was like, I had my heart set on film, not TV. So I said like, oh, no, thanks. But I then wrote like a complaint just saying like, I just think the way they treated me in the interview was really horrific. And then all I got in response was like a rejection. That was it. I didn't get any like confirmation that like they'd like, you know, read my complaint. And I was like, what the hell?
So why did they treat you that way? Do you know? Or
I have no idea. I don't know. For me, it felt like it was maybe like just the vibe, because it's like the sort of uni that I guess is like harder to get into. That they're just quite like arrogant. That's the vibe I got, and it really put me off. And that one of the reasons I loved when I went for the Middlesex University interview was it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like a really nice environment. The lecturers, it was just completely different vibe. They were really nice. It wasn't about making us feel intimidated or making us feel like, you know, under pressure. It was literally just like, I don't know if what your interview was like, but I had like a group one with like some other people, and it was just a really nice like vibe. Just completely different to the way the other one made me feel. And that's why, like, I had an offer from, I think it was West London as well, but ultimately chose Middlesex because of just the vibes. Like, it just had good vibes. Like, that sounds really lame, but it did. Like, it just had good vibes.
So how did you find studying at university? Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, I think everyone probably feels the same in a sense of the way it ended wasn't great because of like COVID kind of ruining everything. And unfortunately, like I think because that is how it ended, that's kind of my main like memory of it. It's just, oh, well, it ended terribly. But like when I like really think about it, I think it's one of the best experiences I've ever had. Mainly because I think of like the people you meet and the kind of opportunities we had and stuff. But then also I really, really loved the screenwriting course. Even when COVID hit, obviously the screenwriting students were lucky in a sense of we could carry on our course on Zoom, unlike obviously the like directing and producing students. And we just did it on Zoom instead, and like it was the same as it always was. And we were doing like table reads, and like we had actors come in and join the Zoom call to read out our scripts. And like I just think I learned so much from university. And like now I find myself when I'm editing someone's script or these YouTube videos, a lot of like what I say is from what I learned at uni. Yeah, I still like very much use it now. And I like criticize uni in a sense of, oh, you don't need to go to uni if you want to do film. Like it could be perceived as like a waste of time and a waste of money, but I would never like go back and not do it, if that makes sense.
So you feel like it was worth it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Although I'm not really interested in screenwriting, I must say that it seemed to me like someone very skilled and knowledgeable in this area.
Yeah.
Do you think the same or not as someone who's more into screenwriting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I learned so much from him. And like prior to uni, like I'd been screenwriting for quite a long time, and I'd been like, I say quite a long time as if it had been like 10 years. It'd been a while. Yeah, like just being kind of self-studying it myself quite a lot. So when I then came into the class and like was learning new stuff literally every single day, I was like, oh my God, this guy is like awesome. He's still like my favorite lecturer from uni. Like I just think he was great.
Really good.
Yeah, really knowledgeable, but also really good at delivering that knowledge. Because I'm very like, I've got a very short attention span. So if someone's like boring to listen to, I just will not listen. But in his lectures, I could have been as tired as anything. It could have been like 9 a.m. and I still would have like listened, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounded good. And was it kind of mix of both learning theory and writing in practice, or was there more of one or the other?
I'd say it was a mix. There was definitely a lot of like actually doing it, even in the lessons where we were more just talking about craft. Throughout the lessons, we'd still be doing like practical kind of like writing tasks, and then going off into groups and discussing what we'd written and stuff. And we used to sit in like a circle and like discuss, you know, what we'd written and why we'd written it and what choices we'd made. And that was actually one of the most like valuable things I found, was I used to be terrified of feedback, like terrified, because I'd be like so embarrassed. I don't know, like, if you've ever had this, but like, I know a lot of writers have the same kind of thing of, we want the world to like read what we write, but the second someone you know reads it in front of you or wants to read it, you're like, absolutely not. That's the most embarrassing thing ever. And it's this weird thing of like, you want the world to read it, but you also don't. And I think that's because a lot of writing comes from a personal place, and it feels like someone's invading your privacy if they're reading it. I know that sounds a bit odd, but it's quite a like universal feeling when it comes to writers. So like the thought of a whole class of people reading my work was the most horrific thing. But then once we started doing it and sitting in a circle and like, you know, you would literally go around the room and everyone would say what they liked and didn't like, which is a horrific like thing. Like that's like terrifying, especially when like new, you know, fairly new to writing. But it was like the most valuable thing I'd ever done. And like now I'm so good at taking feedback, especially like criticism or constructive criticism, I should say.
So you don't feel like that anymore?
No, absolutely not. Like now obviously, I mean, there's like a line, like I think sometimes what I've noticed, because I also like write novels and that sort of stuff, what I've noticed with that kind of world, and to be fair, screenwriting, like you see a lot of it, I'm part of like a lot of groups online and stuff, and people will post sections of their work on like online forums and ask for feedback. And some people are so horrible in the way they write their feedback. Some people say, oh, well, you know, you've got to have thick skin in this industry, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, but also like, don't be a dick and giving feedback to a screenwriter. The last thing I want to do is upset them, because why would I want to do that? They're like baby what they've been working on. You know, I know how it feels when you complete a script and you absolutely like adore it and you've been working on it for ages. It's literally like a child. Mm-hmm. And then you give it to someone to critique. Of course, I don't want to upset that person. So you have to word it in like certain ways. And like one thing I actually like learned from these screenwriting classes was a good way to give feedback is to like sandwich it. So like to say something good, then a piece of criticism, and then something good again. So you're sandwiching with two good things. And I think that's a really good way of doing it. So like if I've given my work to someone to critique or whatever, and they are really rude, I'll just kind of end the exchange, because normally you exchange work with someone. That's how it works, that you exchange work with someone else if you want it for free. You critique them and they critique you. And there has been some instances where people have been really harsh with the way they say things. And it's like, I don't need that. I don't want to basically feel like crap every time I read your critique. I want to feel like inspired to work on my script and change it and adapt it. And I think that's the difference with feedback. Normally I'm fine with taking it and like it's something that I'm just determined to then work on and improve. But I think sometimes people just, I don't know why people do it, but some people just are really horrible with the way they say things.
No, yeah, I understand. I was gonna ask, why do you think is that? But you said you don't know. I thought maybe they want to feel, you know, superior, that they give you like critical feedback so they feel better, or maybe people just don't realize.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like maybe some people just don't realize that the words they are saying are coming across harsh, because like obviously the way things are written sometimes aren't perceived the way they're supposed to, like, you know, like through like text messages and stuff. Sometimes you say something and it's not perceived the way it's supposed to be. But I do think it's probably more that they want to feel superior. They want to make someone else feel not great, basically.
Yeah. I was gonna say, back with the university, I remember that we were recommended some reading books, and although, as I said before, I wasn't really interested in screenwriting, I must say that those books for scriptwriters were really interesting even for me. For example, I remember probably the classic Hero with 1,000 Faces. It was like one of the first books we got. And then there was, I think, Save the Cat and Story.
Yeah, Save the Cat is like my absolute favourite one. I think that book is incredible.
Yeah, I remember the teacher recommended that, and I found it really interesting, you know, even for myself. So you as a screenwriter, did you find them also as interesting or useful?
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, Save the Cat is my absolute favourite. Like anytime I'm editing a script and I want to like, because I normally will recommend the screenwriters some like books on certain things that like, I'll give them like areas of improvement or whatever, and I'll recommend certain books. And I pretty much every time without fail recommend Save the Cat because of the beat sheet. I just think if you follow the beat sheet, you're not going to have a problem with your structure ever, because I just think it's perfect. So I always recommend that one. And yeah, Story as well by Robert. I think it's Robert McKee. That's a really good one as well. It's a bit like chunky in a sense of like the book is really thick and it's just like a lot of words. And I normally don't like reading stuff like that because I'm dyslexic, so I can't read it. Like it literally doesn't make sense. I prefer books that like more spaced out, have some like pretty diagrams or something, you know, like in that sense it's not great, but the actual information is really great and really worthwhile. What other ones were we given? I can't remember. There was that one, we weren't given this one, but we were recommended Screenwriting Updated by Linda Aronson, which that has a lot of diagrams in it. Some of them are really great and it's a lot of like structural stuff, but out of all of them, that's my least favorite one. Like that's the one I've like used the least and I find like the least helpful. But for some people who prefer like diagrams and stuff like that, then perhaps they would prefer that one. But for me, it's not one of my favorites.
And what do you think of Hero with 1,000 Faces?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't read that since uni, but I think like with especially that one, but also just the other screenwriting books you mentioned, even if you're like not a screenwriter, they are really useful to read because I understand that, you know, if you're like directing or producing or whatever, you're not directly going to be like writing the script, but like you obviously still need to kind of, I guess, understand screenwriting and understand, you know, the way characters need to work within a story. And I think Hero and 1,000 Faces is really good for that, you know, about the kind of structure of a story and about the character's journey throughout. And I think anyone working in film needs to understand that, not just screenwriters, if that makes sense.
I agree. I have at least basic knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
And are there any other books that maybe you found very helpful or after uni or you would recommend?
The ones I always use are Reading Screenplays by Lucy Shear. That one, I think if you know how to properly read a screenplay, then you'll know how to write one, basically. So I think that's a really good one. The Art of Script Editing, which I know sounds strange to say, oh, you know, read a book about script editing if you're a screenwriter. But again, if you like know how to edit a script or you know what script editors are looking for, then you're going to be better at screenwriting, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's kind of an odd one, but it's kind of similar to Story in a sense of it's quite text heavy, but it's nowhere near as big. So it's not as intimidating to sit down and read. So yeah, that one as well. That'd be my like recommendation.
Yeah, sounds good. So with the university at the end of the uni, when the COVID happened, what was your final year task instead of short film? Was it a script?
Yeah, so mine was always a script. Obviously, I think like 20% or something of our grade was practical in a sense of being on films. But the rest of it was, we had a 45-minute screenplay we had to write. That was our like main chunk of our grade. Anyway, the whole time. So even when COVID hit, it was the same. So yeah, we'd been planning them all year. And then it was just as we started writing them, that's when COVID hit. So the only thing that changed was that instead of being in the class, we were on Zoom. Everything was the same in a sense of we still had the actors come and read the scripts. Like we did like a table read with actors. They still came and did that.
Join you over the Zoom?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Sounds good.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. It was actually like, it was a really fun class and I'd never had my script read to me. I had kind of in second year when we had the, you know, when like we had all of scripts that had been written and then we had to choose ones to make. Two groups chose my one and I sort of heard them read back to me. Sort of, I mean, one group completely changed the whole script, an interesting experience, but one group didn't. And that was like really cool. But I'd never been in like a table read where, you know, I'd had actors read through like a whole script of mine. So that was like a really cool experience. Even if it was over Zoom, it was just really cool. And the woman who played one of my characters, it was just perfect. And I was like, oh my God, like if I was making this into an actual film, like I would have casted her. Like she was just, honestly, she was perfect with the way she said the like lines and stuff. And it was really cool, like watching it kind of come to life.
And when you said before that they changed your script, how did you feel about it? Was it better or worse or it kind of hurt you?
It didn't hurt me because, you know, fair enough, like do what you want. Obviously, I think my version was better. I don't know. I think when the films were then made and we had like the final versions, the one that was sort of perceived better. Oh my God, I'm going to sound very arrogant, but I'm going to say it. The one that was perceived better was the one that they hadn't changed loads of. They changed the ending, which is fair enough because I didn't really like the ending anyway, but I just couldn't think of anything else to do. So I just did the ending that I did. So they changed the ending and everything. And I was like, but they kind of came to me and said, oh, like, how do you think we should really write this? This is the ending we want. How do you think we should do it, sort of thing? Whereas the other group didn't even talk to me, if that makes sense. They kind of, they said, oh, we were right to change it. And I was like, oh yeah, do what you want. I don't, it's fine. But that was kind of it. They didn't ask for like any advice on like how they wanted to change it or anything, which I found a little bit like, oh, but it's university. And, like I know that, in the real industry, like, your scripts are going to get changed and whatever. So yeah, it's not that deep. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fine. But I preferred the version that was mine.
But it's still, nice that two teams picked your script.
Oh yeah, oh my God, I was absolutely thrilled. I was literally like, oh my God, I remember writing that and I was like so worried, like, oh my God, if it doesn't get in the pool, like, that's like really embarrassing. Like, I've called myself a screenwriter, like, I've gone about how passionate I am about writing. If it doesn't get picked, then that's just really humiliating. And then it did, and I was so relieved, and I was like, oh, thank God. It made me kind of reassured me that I was good at writing, sort of thing. So then when it got picked by two groups, I was like, oh my God, like, it was amazing. It was really cool.
Sounds like a great feeling. And can you remind me briefly what was the script? What was it about?
It was about three like young adults who were like unemployed and didn't, have any money, no jobs, whatever. And they broke into their old primary school to steal some laptops to sell to make money. But when they went inside, they kind of take a trip down memory lane and they remember like what it was like being young and being like optimistic and all that. And then the main character realizes that, what they're doing is wrong, and they basically...
Yes, I remember.
Turn their lives around. Yeah, it's called Miseducation.
And how was the script in third year? Did you have like some kind of idea that you wanted to adapt for a long time, or did you start thinking about it in the third year?
I'd written a short story, which I wanted to adapt into a short film. So that's the idea that I used. And it was like, well, I call it a war story, but I was actually not told off, but I was told that I couldn't call it that because a war story has to take place on the battlefield, which to me doesn't make sense because the war wasn't just on the battlefield. The war was everywhere. The war was like, I'm talking about World War II, by the way. I probably should have said that. But like my story took place in England during World War II with like the evacuations and all that. And I'd written a short story because my granddad used to always tell me stories about when he was evacuated and stuff. He lived in London and was about 9, I believe, when he was evacuated the first time. He used to tell me all these stories, and that's what kind of inspired this short story about a boy being evacuated. And basically, spoiler, he meets a ghost that lives in the attic. And yeah, that's basically like, but you're not supposed to like find that out till the end, obviously. But I don't know, it's confusing. I'm not going to like try and describe the whole script. Yeah, I basically wanted to turn that into a screenplay, which it worked, to be fair. Like, it fit into the 45 minutes quite well. And when we were doing like the feedback lessons, I got some really, really lovely feedback on it, which was really nice. Some really constructive criticism on how to improve it. And then I think in the end, I got the highest grade I ever got at uni on the script and the like portfolio thing combined, which was really nice because I'd put like a lot of work into that script, a lot. And so it was really nice to actually kind of get, something back for that. Normally I'm the opposite. Like, I put loads of work in and I'll still do really bad. So
you were happy with the result in the end?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, really, really proud of it. And the script means a lot to me in a sense of, like I say, my granddad really helped me kind of with creating the character and the story. Like, it's kind of sounds strange, but 2 characters are basically based off him, like the little boy who gets evacuated and the ghost that he meets, both are sort of based off my granddad, but at different stages in his life. And like, when I was interviewing my granddad for it, I like recorded it and everything. And like, whenever I listen back to the recording, like, he sounds really like excited, kind of is talking as if like, I was writing a film about him and he was like, oh, you can use this, but you don't have to use that if you don't want to. Like, that's a bit boring, and like, it's just really sweet. And like, unfortunately, my granddad passed away first year of COVID. So kind of having that memory attached to that script is actually really, really amazing, if that makes sense. And like, it means so much more to me now because it's kind of, the last thing that I did with him was create that story. So yeah, it's definitely like one of the most special kind of things I've ever written, I'd say.
Just a quick one. If you enjoy our podcast, please give us a review on your favorite podcast app, subscribe or share it with your friends. For more information, visit the show notes. Thank you, and back to the show. I'm not sure if it happened before or after, but did your grandpa had the chance to read it in the end?
Unfortunately not. But I don't think personally he would have enjoyed like trying to read a script, if that makes sense. Like watching a film would have been different, but I think he would have found it difficult to follow a screenplay. But no, he never got the chance to read it. But I was able to put, because he was buried, I was able to put a copy of the script in the coffin with him. So as like silly as it probably sounds, I feel like, he has read it somehow, sort of thing. So yeah.
Oh yeah, it sounds quite emotional, but interesting story behind it. Before we move from the topic of the university, is there something you would like to mention? Or maybe, are there any tips you would give to someone who wants to study at university?
I would say that just going, because I didn't know this, and this is the one thing that makes me think maybe if I'd known this, I might not have chosen university. And that's that the film industry don't particularly like people with degrees. Because I think everyone should know that. Like everyone who's interested in studying film should know that if you're going because you want to learn more, great. But don't go thinking, oh, well, if I had this degree on my CV, I'm going to get a job in film a lot easier. Because I didn't know that. And then it's like third year. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, why am I here? Like, why did I choose this sort of thing? So I think, yeah, everyone should know that it's not going to get you a job.
And some tips how to get most out of university?
I think a big part of university is the university experience, enjoying yourself, making friends. Like I still have, my best friends are from uni, but at the same time, like you are there to study. And I'm not saying put your time into studying, but I think a large portion of your time should be studying and working and, making the most of the fact that you're there with all these resources, with these teachers, with these people who have so much knowledge on the subject, and you want to make the most of that. So I think, have fun and make friends and go out and party and whatever, of course, but don't forget why you're at uni, and that is obviously to study and to get a degree at the end of the day. So make sure you do work hard. And I'm not the most studious of people. Like I barely passed my GCSEs, like I'm not intelligent in that sense. But I very much like pushed myself into making sure that I got my assignments done on time and that I studied and listened and worked hard, because if I hadn't, I definitely wouldn't have passed. So yeah, just put the work in, but also have fun.
Yeah. So how did you start planning your way into the industry after uni?
Well, for like, oh my God, maybe like a year or more, I was very like bitter about how the way it ended. And I was quite angry. And like, I was sort of blaming COVID on the fact that I was back living at home. Well, at that time I was working in admin, which, oh my God, worst job ever, like so boring. I was writing in my own time, and I was working on a lot of novels at that time, more so than scripts. Still writing, but
writing for yourself or for someone else?
Just writing for myself, like writing ideas that I had like a couple of ideas at university, and I was just sort of like, because I had so much time, I was able to properly get into them, and it was really nice. If I'm thinking back, like COVID was a stressful time and a pretty dark time for a lot of people. But there were definitely moments that I remember that I'm like, do you know what, actually, I really enjoyed having so much time to write and all of that. But I was very like bitter and angry that I very much felt like if COVID hadn't happened, I would have still been living in London. I would have found my way into the industry somehow, which probably wouldn't have even happened. But that's what I thought. Like, COVID kind of ruined everything. But then it got to a point when I was like, well, I am where I am. I can't change that right now. Like I can't move back to London. I can't, because it's just not possible. But I was like determined to do something with my degree. Like I had a degree and I was like, what can I do with it? Because sitting around moping and blaming like COVID is not getting me anywhere. So then I was like, well, I'd done a bit of like exchanging of scripts and books and stuff like that and giving feedback. And I really enjoyed doing it. Like I really enjoyed kind of analysing other people's work. And I really like helping other people kind of develop their work, I guess. So I was like, well, I enjoy that. I'm like, seem to be okay at it. Maybe I could look into doing that. And a lot of like script editors do work like freelance. They don't like work for a specific company. They just kind of freelance on their own. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I could give that a go. And I started on Fiverr, which was a good way to like find people, but also like Fiverr takes quite a big cut of what you earn. And I didn't like that because I was like, I'm doing all the work. So why am I giving like loads of my money away? So I decided to then like create my own website and my own sort of brand and do it that way instead. And I definitely don't get as many like
offers.
Yeah. The good thing about Fiverr is it obviously kind of puts your advert out there a bit more. And obviously having just your own website is a lot harder to get yourself out there. But it feels a lot more real, I guess, and more authentic that I can do it like myself. And these people normally find me via YouTube or TikTok because, you know, I'm a bit of a TikToker. I like post some like TikTok videos about script editing and stuff. And that's how I try to advertise myself a bit. But yeah, they normally find me through that. And like the people I worked with so far, they've all been like great. Like I've read some really incredible scripts. And yeah, and that's sort of how I got into that. It's very much still at the beginnings. I think I've been doing, I say beginnings, I think I've been doing it for about a year now, like properly. It took me a while to set it all up. And I've been on a bit of a break recently because I've just literally moved back to London and I didn't want to have to kind of deal with that whilst I was like homeless for like 2 weeks because my flat wasn't ready and I was in like a hostel. It was awful. Yeah, I didn't really want to be kind of having to like email people explaining, oh, I can't actually do it right now. You know what I mean? So I just kind of switched my settings to automatic, letting people know that I'm like on leave or whatever. So I haven't really been doing much of it recently. In fact, I've just literally switched it back online, if that makes sense. But like, yeah, it's been a really amazing experience so far. I wish I could do it full time and live off it. But unfortunately, I do not earn anywhere near enough to live in London. That's why I'm doing that.
I understand, yeah. And if the COVID didn't happen, did you have like a plan how to start or what jobs to apply for or what steps to take?
I mean, before COVID, I still do want to work on film sets at some point. Like that's kind of my goal is I would like to actually work on a set. I'd like to kind of obviously start off as a runner and then just see where that takes me and see kind of what position I could climb to. That would be like my absolute dream. I still do want to do that, but that was definitely what my heart was set on when uni was ending. Because I think when it comes to like writing, it's more of like it's hard to describe without like diminishing it because it's not a hobby by any means. Like I think people who are serious about it, it's not a hobby. It's a genuine passion. It's just something that you obviously want to pursue. But it feels like a hobby because a lot of it you have to do in your own time and you're doing it. You know, you're not earning money by sitting at your desk writing a screenplay, you know, about something that you want to then go and pitch to someone. Like right now I'm working on an adaptation with an author and like all that time that we're spending on that, neither of us are earning any money doing it, but we're hoping that one day we can pitch it and potentially sell it to someone sort of thing. So I think because of that's the way kind of screenwriting works, especially when you're starting off, it's the sort of thing that you kind of have to do alongside another job because obviously you need to live. So my kind of plan was like, oh, I want to get a job on a film set. I want to like be a runner or something. So my plan was that when uni ended, I would basically just start applying for every single runner job I could possibly get my hands on and just see what happens, see if I get anywhere. And I've always kind of been inclined when it comes to applying for jobs of like, I don't even know where I saw this, but I saw this bit of advice. It was probably online somewhere that was never say no to yourself. And like, anytime I'm like applying for a job, even if I think it's a long shot, I'm like, well, I'm not going to say no to myself. I'll let them say no to me. I think it's a really like, good thing to keep in your mind because it's like, it kind of pushes you to apply for stuff that maybe you wouldn't apply for. Because why not? Like you've got nothing to lose. The worst they can say is no. So just go for it. So that was my plan, was to just apply for any runner job I could find. It's still, to be fair, like eventually that is what I want to do, but I'm just trying to settle back into London life, which we know is very expensive. And I do want to start looking for those runner jobs again, but we'll see, I guess. We'll see.
Yeah, fingers crossed. If you worked on a set, where would you want to go from a runner position? Is there like a specific position you would want to do that would help you to ultimately become a screenwriter?
Well, I did like a bit of script supervision in uni, which I did really enjoy. I know like no one liked that position at uni, but I actually really enjoyed it. I guess because you are working closely with the scripts and I very much can like read scripts and kind of understand scripts quite easily. I spend most of my time staring at them. And especially when you're editing someone else's script, you know, sometimes it can be difficult because you're not inside the head of the writer and you might not understand what they're trying to do and it can be tricky. So I think I'm quite good at like understanding scripts. So I always enjoyed doing that. But I think I also really enjoyed, which I know sounds insane, but I did enjoy first ADing. Like, I quite like, not being in control, that sounds a bit weird, but like, I like organizing people and like being like, hey, you need to be there, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think like, you know, that would be the natural progression of you start off as a runner and then you kind of try and work your way up and up into that kind of side of the production. It's definitely something I would be interested in. But then on the other hand, I really, really enjoyed casting. Like, I loved being in casting room. And I don't know if you remember, but when we were doing auditions for Hirai, I was like, please let me in the room. Like, I really want to casting stuff. I just really enjoy it. So pre-production wise, I have actually applied for a few casting assistant jobs because that's definitely also something that I would be quite interested in because I do really like that process of filmmaking as well.
Yes, casting sounds quite exciting because you meet so many new people and all those people kind of want to do their best in order to get a role. You know, they're putting effort into it. So it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe if there was listening someone who doesn't know what we just discussed, can you briefly introduce what does the script supervisor do and first AD, what do they do?
So script supervisors like they basically like continuity sort of thing. So they do like a big breakdown of the script and they make note of anything that like could become an issue with continuity. So like, for example, if you have like a dinner scene where people are eating, that's something that you're going to have to obviously keep a close eye on and really watch over when you're filming because you obviously want all the shots to match up. The example I always give is, I feel like everyone knows, I've never seen Game of Thrones, but there was that one shot that went viral because there was a Starbucks.
I know what is coming up.
Yeah. That was, for example, would be like script supervisor should have noticed that kind of thing and then alerted the art department. Oh, by the way, there is a Starbucks coffee cup on the table.
Is he or she then the person to blame if this happens?
Well, sort of, but also something I was told at uni was that a lot of the time you'll say, oh, you know, there's a continuity issue here, but the director will say, no, I don't care, carry on. So then there are continuity errors, and pretty much every film you watch, there's gonna be one or two continuity errors. Sometimes they're just unavoidable. But apparently, according to who, you know, was a script supervisor, said that quite a lot of the time it is actually just because the director said, no, just carry on. But then the blame falls on the script supervisor anyway, because it's their department, their job, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, yes and no, I guess. It is, they are to blame, but they're also not always to blame. Sometimes it's the director.
I also remember from her, she described the position that as a script supervisor, you are kind of the person who is sitting somewhere in the background under a table with your stuff and trying to oversee it. And then they quite often even forget about you, that you are there. So it sounds like a position that it's very important, but it's not much appreciated.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I script supervised for one of the only films that managed to get made in third year before COVID hit, which was, like, to be fair, a really amazing experience. I absolutely adore that film. But yeah, like, on that set, I felt like a little, like, I don't know, like a little mouse, just piping up, oh, we need to change this, we need to do that. And to be fair, they were very, like, willing to kind of listen, if that makes sense. Anytime I said, oh, we need to change this, he was always on board. He never once said, no, we need to carry on. And we had, like, a prison scene where there was a prison riot, and I could tell by the look on his face that he was like, oh my God, this is chaos. Like, we only had a certain amount of extras and he wanted to make it look like there was more than there actually was. But he didn't want the same extra to appear in like two different angles, you know, like to make it obvious sort of thing. So we were like having to like rotate the extras and he was like, bless him, looked really like worried about it. But it turned out fine. Like it looked really amazing. But that film did pose quite a few challenges for script supervising, like, and we had a dinner scene where I told the actors just basically try not to eat anything because it's just going to cause problems. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but like in films, whenever there is a dinner scene, the food always looks incredible, but they never eat. And now I know why, because it's so difficult to get the continuity if characters start eating.
So how did you feel about, were you scared before that scene with Riot, or were you kind of excited that, wow, this is my moment to, you know, show myself?
Yeah, like it was really nerve-wracking, but it was actually really enjoyable. Like it was really cool to see that all come to life. And I would say, actually, I was more nervous when we had the dinner scene. Like, that was really freaking me out. I was so anxious about it. I was like, oh my God, I was going to each actor, like, please just don't eat anything. Like, and they didn't eat anything, but the lead actor, he picked up the jug of water and started pouring water for some reason while they were doing their lines. And then we finished like the master shot. And then he was like, oh, I don't know, I did that. And then we didn't really have time to refilm it. So then in every single other like angle, he had to do exactly the same thing, pouring this water in every like take. I was just like, mate. And he just looked like, you know, like, why the hell did I do that? It's like really complicated. But to be fair, when I watch it back, there aren't actually that many errors in that scene. There's the odd bit that you're like, oh, but nothing too major. So it's fine. It worked out.
Still, there are some.
Yeah, there's a couple. And I guess it is my fault.
Was it because you didn't notice, or was it too hard or impossible?
Hard. Like, we tried our best to match it up. We literally were there rehearsing it. Like, we'd written on the script, like, when to pick up water. That's literally how, like, I literally sat down with him and was like, right, so you pick up water on this line, you pour it on this line, then you pick up that cup on this line. Tried to do it as best we could. But there are a couple of moments where, like, if you're really watching closely, if you're focusing on the water, you would obviously notice. But I'm hoping that when people watch it, they're just focusing on what the characters are talking about, and therefore they're not actually looking at the water, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If I was watching and you didn't tell me, I wouldn't probably notice.
I don't think so. I think I only noticed it because I'm looking for it, because I'm like, oh my God, this was my moment. And I messed it up.
No, yeah. It sounds like something you need to pay attention all the time to the details.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because then you forget, then someone watches the film and you find out and it's too late.
Yeah, no, it's very much like, you know, you can't stand there having a chat with someone. You've got to be focused the whole time, because you could just miss something and then it's your fault, essentially.
And how was the film in the end, actually?
Oh, I love it. Like, they just released it on like an actual platform. So like people can watch it, because for ages it was in, you know, it was like in film festivals and stuff, so they couldn't release it. But like, sometimes I just go back and watch it and I'm like, oh my God, I have such good memories from doing it. And it just turned out, it just looks incredible. It really does. And like, did a great job with the producing side of things, like getting the prison location. How do you get a prison? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's amazing. I remember when he came into our screenwriting class to talk about the script, because he wrote the script. And I remember like when we read it out, I was like, gosh, this is like one of my favorite scripts I've heard so far. Like, very much my kind of story, like a nice drama, really like nice character development and stuff. And yeah, and I was like happy because they asked, like, they said, oh, can we talk to you? And I was like, oh my God, what do you want? And then they were like, oh, we wonder if you'd be our script supervisor. And I was like, oh my God, like, yes. Because I was like, really loved the script anyway. So to be able to then work on the film and work so closely with the script was like really exciting.
Yeah, sounds like a good experience. And also lucky that managed to film it before the COVID.
Yeah. Literally, I remember being on set and reading about how preschool where my parents live had to close because of COVID. And I remember reading that literally whilst I was making myself a cup of tea. That's such a distinct memory in my head, because that was kind of like the first time I'd properly like realised, oh my God, COVID's actually
serious.
It's like a genuine like bad thing. But yeah, we managed to literally film it. And then I think it was the next film I was on where after ours went all wrong with the storm and stuff. And I was literally, it was like the following day and we were about to leave. And then we were like, yeah, we can't, like, it's all been cancelled because of COVID. It was literally like a week after it all went pear-shaped. So yeah, we were very, very lucky to get it shot.
I remember it was crazy. And it's like no one knew what was happening, when we are going to make it, if you are going to make it.
It was really horrific. Not a good memory.
And when it comes to being a first AD, can you say a bit more about that role?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to describe that, I think, is that it's like the on-set producer. So you're there to kind of make sure that that like shooting schedule is sort of going right, that you're doing the shots that need to be done at the right time. You want to get everything that's on the schedule shot within the day. So you're kind of just making sure. You're basically the most hated person on set because you yell at everyone. Basically, the job is you yell at everyone to say hurry up, and everyone yells back at you saying, like, we want to do one more sort of thing. Well, I was obviously first AD for you and Miguel's production, And obviously we had issues getting down there. So we were way behind schedule. So I was in the van, like ringing the camera department, which we were in a different car, basically trying to figure out what we're going to film, you know, what we're going to cut and everything and all that to fit it in. And obviously then we had the storm and I had to make the call of basically cancelling it, which was so hard because I was like, I remember being on the phone and he was like, well, what's your plan B? And I was like, I ain't got one, mate, because we like the weather, this literally came out of nowhere. We checked the weather yesterday and it was fine. We're here today and we're literally in a monsoon. There is no plan B. The plan B is to go home and have to reschedule. Like there is no other choice. We don't have like a bloody soundstage. Do you know what I mean? Like
No, yeah, I agree. Especially you can have a plan B, but it was kind of impossible because, you know, the productions were scheduled so tightly that if you reschedule, you don't have a crew. And then when you are going to make it, when you are going to do post-production, are you going to make it on time?
Yeah, exactly. It was a really like awful situation to be in because I remember like you weren't there. Yeah, I don't know. Where were you? Were you like traveling down or you were like meeting us?
Because there are some issues with the equipment and because I was probably least needed person to be physically on a set. I was about to come a bit later after I get equipment from the kit. And I remember I was standing on a train station just a few minutes from getting on a bus to get to you. And, you know, unsure if I should get on or not get on because it was getting it. It was crazy, honestly.
Yeah, I remember literally being in like middle of the woods, raining. We had like Sonera, who was the actress, like just, she was lovely to be fair. She was like, oh, it's fine. But she was just getting absolutely soaked. We had all this camera equipment covered with like tarpaulin. And we were just stood there and I was like, guys. And I remember Miguel looked at me and his like eyes widened in like fear. And I was like, guys, this isn't going to work. Like, I think we're going to have to cancel. And it was so horrible having to like say those words. But I feel like I'm going to have to make this call. And it's just, we're either going to damage the equipment, damage an actor. It's just not going to work. Like, we're just going to have to reschedule. And obviously never got the chance to because of COVID. But yeah, that was like, being a side AD is no joke. Like, it's genuinely really, like, you have to have, I think, quite thick skin to do it because you are kind of the person who has to make hard decisions. You have to be the unpopular person who tells people to hurry up, basically. And yeah, but I quite like it. I quite like telling people what to do.
And there is on bigger productions also second AD, right? Or even more ADs.
Yeah, like I was a third AD on someone else's production.
Oh, third one.
Yeah. On it was.
Was it the year above us?
Yeah, I think we were in second year and it was the third year productions. But yeah, I was third AD on that film, which was really cool because I kind of got to see, you know, they had like a big, what do you call it? Like a big arm thing that had the camera on it. And it was like going around the room. It was really cool. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is what we've got to look forward to in third year, like doing these like bigger productions and stuff. So yeah, I don't know if you can have more than a third AD, but you can definitely have first, second and third. I'm not sure about fourth and fifth, but...
And why was it actually third AD? Was it a big crew or cast or production overall?
It wasn't necessarily like that big of a crew and production and stuff. They had the position going and I sort of got in touch with you and just said, oh, I'd be really interested in that. Because I was producing our short film at the time for second year. And I said, like, it would be a great experience if I could kind of see you producing your final project. And she was like, absolutely. So she sort of let me do it because it was more of like a, you know, I kind of asked, can I see? And she was like, yeah, here you go, third AD. But yeah, because it wasn't necessarily a big enough production to need a third AD. But yeah, it was a really good experience actually.
And did you still have a lot to do?
Yeah, I was more like jumping around different departments. Like I was helping a bit in the art department with setting up the props and stuff, and helping with the actors. Like I was kind of doing a bit of all sorts, if that makes sense. I wasn't just focusing on like schedule or anything like that, or just focusing on looking after the actors. I was doing a bit of everything, which was actually really cool, like because it meant I could kind of see all the different departments like doing their thing. But yeah, it was cool.
Then we discussed before working casting, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory. So you can't really need to say more. Or is there something you would like to say about that at all?
Not really. It's just literally casting people, like, you know, watching auditions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds kind of, how to say it, like an interesting job. You are basically there and sharing your opinion and just telling people you are, fit for the role, you are not fit for the role. I'm not saying it's easy or that you don't do much, but sounds like a good job to do for me.
Yeah, definitely less stressful than first dating, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think there is still plenty of stuff to discuss. So if you agreed, I would recommend maybe to finish for today and to do second part sometime in the future.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's fine by me.
Because there are still plenty of questions to ask. So, Evangeline, thank you for coming today, and I'll be happy to do part 2 in the future if we're up for it. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Wish you good luck in your career and see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Produced By. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app, leave a review, or send us your feedback. For more information about the host, links from the episode, and ways to connect with us, visit the show notes. If you know someone who would be an ideal guest for our podcast, please get in touch. Thank you and see you soon.